Commander Velthar had seen a lot of things in his 37 years as a drill instructor at the Galactic Coalition Military Academy. He had seen cadets from the methane-breathing Thoraxians pass out from oxygen toxicity. He had watched a crystalline delegate literally shatter from stress. Once he had even witnessed a Voldarian cadet eat his own uniform out of panic-induced hunger. But in all those years, in all those cycles of putting bright-eyed young recruits through absolute hell, he had never seen anything quite like this. The human was eating a granola bar. Velthar's forearms crossed simultaneously over his scaled chest as he observed the pre-deployment area. 200 cadets from 47 different species were gearing up for the Krathvor survival course, and they were gearing up the way people do when they know they are about to suffer. There was the quiet acceptance of the Zentari monks. There was the loud bravado of the Krellian warriors who would definitely be crying by hour 6. There was the methodical preparation of the Quix engineers who had apparently brought enough survival equipment to supply a small colony. And then there was Marcus Webb from Earth, sitting on a bench, chewing thoughtfully, reading what appeared to be a tourist pamphlet about the Academy's cafeteria options. "Excuse me," Velthar said, his translator chip working overtime to convert his gravelly Corthan into something approximating pleasant inquiry. "Cadet Webb, are you aware of what you are about to undertake?" Marcus looked up with the expression of someone who had been asked if he knew what day of the week it was, mildly surprised that anyone needed to ask. "Oh yeah, the survival course thing, right? 48 hours, simulated death world conditions, builds character and all that." He took another bite of his granola bar. "Quick question though, is there Wi-Fi in the death zone? I promised my mom I would check in." Velthar's secondary eyelids closed in what might have been a meditative attempt at patience. "Cadet, the Krathvor survival course has a 40% dropout rate. Last year we had 17 medical evacuations. The year before that, a Graxian senator tried to have it classified as a war crime." "Yikes," Marcus said, with the tone of someone reacting to news that it might rain later. "So that's a no on the Wi-Fi?" Before Velthar could respond with something that was probably going to get him written up by HR, the warning klaxons sounded. It was time. 200 cadets shuffled toward the deployment shuttles with the enthusiasm of people walking toward their own funerals. Marcus stood up, brushed granola crumbs off his standard-issue jumpsuit, and stretched like he was getting ready for a light afternoon jog. "Listen up," Velthar's voice boomed across the deployment bay. This was his moment. The speech he had given 214 times. The speech that was supposed to inspire and terrify in equal measure. The Krathvor course is designed to break you. It will test every limit you think you have and then find new limits you didn't know existed. You will face extreme heat, extreme cold, hostile fauna, toxic flora, and terrain that wants you dead. 48 hours in hell, cadets. The only rules are these. Don't die, don't kill each other, and reach the extraction point by the deadline. Your emergency beacons will evacuate you if you quit. But know this. Quitting means failure. Quitting means you were not strong enough for the coalition." There was a moment of heavy silence. Someone in the back was definitely crying already. "Any questions?" Marcus raised his hand. "Are there bathrooms or is this like a dig-a-hole situation?" Velthar was really starting to regret accepting Earth into the Coalition's exchange program. The deployment was, as always, deliberately chaotic. Shuttles dropped cadets in scattered groups across a 60-square-kilometer zone of what could politely be called aggressively inhospitable terrain. The simulation was based on Krath Prime, a planet that had been abandoned by its original inhabitants after they collectively decided that living literally anywhere else would be preferable. Within the first 30 minutes, the heat became a character in its own right. At 110 degrees standard temperature, the air shimmered with malicious intent. The sun, or rather the 3 orbital heat lamps that made up the simulation's sun, beat down with the intensity of a cosmic bully who had found someone's lunch money. Cadet Crix, a mantoid from Chitros whose exoskeleton was already showing stress fractures, had immediately taken charge of a group of 7 cadets. He had color-coded supply packs. He had a 20-page strategy document. He had contingency plans for his contingency plans. He was, in his own clicking words, going to ace this thing with pure preparation. He was also visibly panicking. "Water rations," Crix chittered to his group, mandibles clacking with stress. 0.5 liters every 4 hours, no more. The recyclers can only do so much. Nearby, Norva, a gaseous ethereal contained in what looked like a very stressed-out hazmat suit, was having what could only be described as an existential crisis. Why did I enlist? Norva's voice emanated from the suit's speaker in wavering tones. I'm literally not built for this. I don't even have a body in the traditional sense. What am I trying to prove? That you are strong, Crick said, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. That you can endure. I'm gas, Crick's gas. I'm having an identity crisis in a tin can. 3 hours in, the first evacuations began. A Grellian cadet simply laid down and activated his emergency beacon, muttering something about how his father was right, and he should have gone into accounting. A pair of Zentari monks followed soon after when one of them hallucinated that the rocks were judging him. By hour 4, the dropout count was at 15 and climbing. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb had found a nice shady spot under a rock outcropping and was doing stretches. Not survival stretches, not emergency medical stretches. Casual morning jog-in-the-park stretches. One leg extended, reaching for his toes, humming what the translator chip was rendering as something called Don't Stop Believing. Velthar, watching from the command center through dozens of monitoring drones, felt his jaw drop in a way that was probably not befitting a commander of his stature. What is his heart rate? He demanded. The monitoring tech, a nervous Quix named Pip, checked her screens. 72 beats per minute, sir. That's impossible. The ambient temperature is 110 degrees. His heart rate should be elevated. His stress hormones should be spiking. Is his tracker malfunctioning? All biometrics are reading normal, sir. He's just calm. On screen, Marcus finished his stretches and started walking. Not the desperate, water-conserving shuffle of the other cadets. A casual stroll. He even waved at a monitoring drone like he was greeting a neighbor. This is day 1, Velthar muttered. It's always day 1 that separates the quitters from the stubborn fools. Back in the simulation, Crix's group had encountered their first major obstacle, a stretch of volcanic rock fields that retained heat like a grudge. The ground was quite literally hot enough to damage their boots. Cross quickly, Crix ordered, his tactical mind overriding his desire to curl up and weep. Minimize contact time. Step lightly. His group began the agonizing crossing, hopping from rock to rock, like the world's most miserable game of hopscotch. Halfway across, they encountered Marcus coming from the opposite direction. Oh hey, Marcus said cheerfully. You guys doing the zigzag pattern too? Smart. Distributes the heat exposure. Crick stared. You're not wearing your thermal insulation booties. Marcus glanced down at his standard boots. Oh, was I supposed to? The equipment list was like 10 pages and I kinda skimmed it. Your feet should be cooking. I mean, it's warm, yeah. Feels like walking on a beach back home. Maybe a bit warmer. I went to Death Valley once and that was pretty toasty. Death Valley, Crix repeated slowly. Your planet has a place called Death Valley and you went there voluntarily? Oh sure, it's a tourist spot. Hottest place in North America. Gets up to like 130 degrees in the summer. My dad wanted to see it, so we made a road trip out of it. Pretty cool, actually. Well, not cool, the opposite of cool, you know what I mean. Crix's group stared as Marcus gave a friendly wave and continued walking across the volcanic field like he was taking a shortcut through a grocery store parking lot. I'm going to fail this course. Norva's voice crackled from the containment suit. We're all going to fail and that human is going to get a medal. We are not failing, Crix said, though his mandibles were chattering with something that was definitely not confidence. We are prepared, we have plans. He doesn't even have his thermal booties. Shut up, Norva. Night fell on the Krathvor simulation with the subtlety of a hammer. The temperature, which had spent all day trying to cook the cadets alive, decided to swing hard in the opposite direction. Within an hour of sunset, it dropped to 14 degrees. Standard, not Celsius, not Fahrenheit. Standard, which meant it was cold enough that water vapor in the air was forming tiny crystals. The cadets, naturally, were not having a great time. Crix's group had managed to huddle together for warmth, which sounds nice in theory, but in practice meant that 7 different species, with 7 different optimal temperature ranges, were all equally miserable in close proximity. Norva's containment suit was vibrating with what was either sophisticated thermal regulation or the ethereal equivalent of shivering. This is insane, wheezed a Thoraxian cadet named Brex, whose respiratory system was clearly not designed for these conditions. How does anything survive in this? By being tougher than you, Crick snapped, though his exoskeleton was making concerning creaking noises. We knew there would be temperature fluctuations. We prepared for this. Prepared, Norva moaned. We have 2 thermal blankets for 7 people. That's not preparation, that's optimistic delusion. Would you prefer to activate your beacon and evacuate? Yes, actually. I would prefer that very much. But my father's voice keeps echoing in my head saying, Norva, you're literally made of gas. How can you fail at anything? And it's really complicating my decision-making process. While they bickered, Marcus was about 50 meters away, and he had built a shelter. Not a crude huddling spot, not a desperate pile of rocks. An actual, honest-to-goodness shelter with a windbreak, a thermal reflection setup using his emergency blanket, and what appeared to be a small depression dug to minimize heat loss. He had accomplished this in approximately 15 minutes, using what he would later describe as basic camping skills from Boy Scouts. He was now sitting in his shelter, eating another granola bar, looking cozy. Crix noticed because one of his group members pointed and made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and an accusation. How? Marcus looked over and waved. Oh, hey, you guys need help? I've got some extra space if you want to squeeze in. There was a moment where pride warred with hypothermia. Hypothermia won. 10 minutes later, Crix's entire group was crammed into Marcus's shelter like the world's most awkward sleepover. Marcus had somehow made it work, repositioning the windbreak and redistributing the thermal blankets with the casual competence of someone who had done this before. Where did you learn this? Crix demanded, his pride bruised, but his carapace significantly warmer. Oh, you know, summer camp, family camping trips. That one time I got lost hiking in the Rockies for like 6 hours. Marcus shrugged. My dad's really into outdoor stuff. Always said it builds character. I thought it just built mosquito bite tolerance, but I guess the shelter thing stuck. Your people do this, recreationally. Well, yeah, I mean, not everyone, but it's pretty common. Camping, hiking, backpacking. Some people are really into it. There's this whole thing called ultralight backpacking where you try to carry as little as possible and just survive on skills. It's like a hobby. Norva's suit speaker crackled with disbelief. You're telling me that on your planet people voluntarily put themselves in survival situations for fun? I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds weird. Before anyone could respond, the shelter's perimeter alarm buzzed. Something was approaching, something big. Marcus poked his head out and then immediately pulled back in. Okay, so there's like a really big lizard thing out there and it looks annoyed. Through the shelter's gap, they could see it. A Krathstalker, one of the simulation's infamous predators. 3 meters long, covered in overlapping plates, with a jaw that suggested its diet consisted of things that screamed. It was circling the shelter with clear intent. Emergency beacon, Brex wheezed. I'm activating my emergency beacon. No, Crix hissed. We can wait it out. It will leave eventually. The stalker roared, which was less of a sound and more of a declaration that someone's day was about to get significantly worse. Marcus stood up. What are you doing? Crix's voice went up an octave. Scaring it off. That is not a thing you can do to a Krathstalker. Marcus stepped out of the shelter, spread his arms wide and yelled. Not words. Just a loud, aggressive yell that the translator chip didn't even try to process. He made himself big, waved his arms and advanced on the stalker with the confidence of someone who had definitely watched too many nature documentaries. The stalker stopped, tilted its head, and then, in a move that would be analyzed by xenobiologists for years, it backed up and left. Marcus ducked back into the shelter. Okay, that worked better than expected. Most predators don't actually want to fight, they just want easy meals. If you make yourself look dangerous and loud, they usually back off. Crix's mandibles hung open. That should not have worked. I mean, it worked on a bear once in Colorado, so I figured, might as well try. A bear. A bear. Yeah, they're like big furry omnivores back home. Pretty dangerous if they're hungry or feel threatened. You're supposed to make yourself look big and make noise. Works most of the time. Most of the time, Norva repeated weakly. He said most of the time like that's acceptable odds. Back in the command center, Velthar was having what could clinically be described as a moment. Pull up the human's homeworld file, he ordered Pip. Sir? Earth. I want to know what kind of planet produces a species that treats a Krathstalker encounter like a minor inconvenience. Pip's fingers danced across the console. The file loaded. Velthar began to read. His scales paled from deep green to a sickly olive. This can't be right. Sir? It says Earth has temperature ranges from -50 to +50 degrees Celsius naturally occurring. It says they have weather patterns called hurricanes that destroy entire settlements. It says they have predators on every continent and in every biome. And the humans are at the top of the food chain despite being soft bipeds with no natural weapons. That's what the file says, sir. Velthar scrolled further. It says Earth's oxygen content is 21%. Standard coalition atmosphere is 14%. They're breathing diluted air here and they think it's normal. Should we tell them? Tell them what? That we've been running a survival course based on conditions milder than their home planet? Velthar slumped in his chair, all four arms hanging limply. This human isn't excelling at the course. He's just homesick. 24 hours into the Krathvor survival course, the simulation decided it was time to escalate from moderately torturous to actively sadistic. Of the original 200 cadets, only 67 remained. The rest had either evacuated voluntarily or been medically extracted after suffering from heat exhaustion, hypothermia, dehydration, psychological breaks, or in one memorable case, an allergic reaction to the simulated dirt. The remaining cadets were now facing the course's crown jewel of suffering, the Miasma Flats, a 10-kilometer stretch of toxic swamp terrain, where the air was thick enough to see. The ground was questionable at best, and the atmosphere had an oxygen content that made breathing feel like sucking air through a coffee stirrer. Crix was crawling. Not metaphorically, literally crawling on his 6 legs through mud that smelled like regret and tasted worse. His carefully organized supply pack was gone, sacrificed somewhere around kilometer 3 when he realized he needed to choose between breathing and carrying things. He had chosen breathing, though even that was negotiable at this point. I'm dying, he chittered weakly. This is what dying feels like. Next to him, Norva's containment suit was beeping in a way that suggested critical systems were considering early retirement. My filters are at 17% capacity. The toxic particles are compromising my containment integrity. I can feel myself literally degrading. Then activate your beacon, wheezed Brex, who was making wet wheezing sounds that definitely weren't in his species' normal vocal range. No shame in it. We've lasted longer than most. A Krellian warrior named Thud, whose earlier bravado had evaporated somewhere around hour 12, was face down in the mud making muffled sobbing sounds. How much further? Norva asked, though the question sounded more like a prayer than an actual inquiry. 6 kilometers, Crix managed to say. 6 more kilometers of this. That's when Marcus jogged past them. Not a desperate run, not a survival sprint. A jog. He had his arms moving in that rhythmic way that people do when they're exercising on purpose. His breathing was elevated but controlled. He had a light sheen of sweat on his forehead, but otherwise looked like someone halfway through a morning workout routine. On your left, Marcus said cheerfully as he passed. The group stopped moving entirely, not because they chose to, but because witnessing this moment required all their remaining brain function. He's jogging, Crix said slowly. We're dying and he's jogging. To keep his energy up, Norva added, voice flat with disbelief. He said he's jogging to keep his energy up. Marcus slowed down and turned back. Oh hey, you guys okay? You look rough. Want me to carry someone's pack? I've got space. Your heart rate should be at 180, Crix said, his tactical mind still trying to process what it was seeing. The oxygen levels here are 9%. 9%. How are you not unconscious? I mean, it's a little thin, Marcus admitted. Feels like being at high altitude. I went to Peru once, saw Machu Picchu. The altitude there was pretty intense. You just gotta breathe more. Breathe more, Crix repeated. He says breathe more like we haven't thought of that. Also, staying hydrated helps, and moving keeps your circulation going. If you stop for too long, you start to stiffen up. I'm going to kill him, Norva announced to no one in particular. We're going to fail this course, but I'm going to use my last coherent thought to murder this aggressively helpful human. Marcus, oblivious to the brewing homicidal ideation, pulled out a water bottle. Here, you guys should drink something. Dehydration makes altitude problems worse. That's your water, Crix protested weakly. I've got more. Plus there was a stream back at kilometer 7 that looked clean enough. I've got purification tablets. He had purification tablets. Of course he had purification tablets. Back at the command center, Velthar was no longer watching the screens. He was reading Earth's planetary file with the intensity of someone studying sacred texts. 3 other instructors had gathered around him, their various appendages pointing at different sections of the document with increasing alarm. Look at this, Velthar said, highlighting a section. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Standard coalition gravity is 7.2. They've been training under increased gravity their entire lives. Instructor Corks, a hulking Grellian, leaned in. What about the atmospheric composition? 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, trace gases. Our standard atmosphere is 60% nitrogen, 14% oxygen, 26% other. They're breathing less oxygen than they're used to and performing better. Climate? Asked Instructor Ylva, her crystalline structure flickering with what might have been concern. Velthar scrolled to the climate section and immediately regretted it. Temperature ranges from -89.2 to 56.7 Celsius naturally occurring. That's without factoring in their climate control or protective equipment. The planet has 6 major climate zones, each with wildly different conditions. Please tell me about natural disasters, Cork said in the tone of someone who already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Let me see. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, blizzards, landslides, avalanches, wildfires, and something called a sharknado, though I suspect that might be fictional. What's their death world classification? Velthar scrolled to the bottom of the file. The number sat there like an accusation. Class 12. The room went silent. Class 12 was the maximum rating. It meant a planet was actively trying to kill everything on it at all times, through multiple simultaneous means. The Krath-4 course is based on conditions from Krath Prime, Ylva said slowly. Krath Prime is Class 9. I'm aware. So we've been testing cadets using conditions that are milder than this human's home planet. Yes. And he signed up thinking it was what, a field trip? Velthar pulled up Marcus's enrollment file. His forearms went limp again. He's not even a military cadet. He's an exchange student studying xenobiology. He thought this was an elective course. On the screens, Marcus had reached the checkpoint station ahead of schedule. He waved at the monitoring drone, giving a thumbs-up gesture that the Coalition database translated as status optimal. Does anyone else think, Cork said carefully, that maybe we should reconsider Earth's threat assessment in the Coalition database? It's currently listed as non-threatening, pending full integration review, Pip supplied helpfully. Change it, Velthar ordered. Bump them up to potential extreme threat. On what grounds, sir? On the grounds that a casual exchange student is outperforming our best military cadets, while treating our maximum difficulty survival course like a morning jog. Back in the Miasma Flats, Marcus had returned to Crixia's group with extra water and what appeared to be some kind of energy bar he'd been saving. Okay, so here's the thing. You guys can totally make it. It's all mental at this point. Your bodies can do way more than your brain thinks they can. You just gotta push through the discomfort. Push through, Crix wheezed. Push through the discomfort. Yeah, exactly. Mind over matter. That's what my track coach used to say. Pain is just your body's way of asking if you're sure and you gotta tell it yes. Norva's suit speaker crackled with laughter that sounded slightly unhinged. His track coach. He has motivational advice from his track coach. We're being out-survived by motivational advice from a track coach. Coach Roberts was pretty intense, Marcus admitted. Made us run hills in the summer heat. Built character, though. Everything builds character on your planet, doesn't it? Crix asked. Pretty much, yeah. The last 12 hours of the Krath-4 survival course took place on what the simulation designers called the Ascent. Everyone else called it, why did we sign up for this, the mountain. It was a 3-kilometer vertical climb through thin atmosphere, loose rock, and the crushing realization that every decision in your life had led you to this moment of suffering. The oxygen content at the base was already questionable. At the summit, it dropped to 6%, which was less of an atmospheric composition and more of a philosophical question about what constitutes breathable air. Of the 67 cadets who had made it to the mountain, only 23 were still conscious and mobile. The others had evacuated throughout the miasma flats or were currently being extracted by medical drones after various systems failures. Crix was among the 23, though calling him mobile was generous. He was moving through pure spite and the fear of disappointing his clutch mother. His exoskeleton had stress fractures in 4 places. His supply pack was a distant memory. His tactical planning document was being used as emergency toilet paper by someone back in the swamp. But he was still climbing. Norva was also technically present, though the Ethereal's containment suit was held together by hope and what appeared to be emergency tape. The suit's AI kept suggesting evacuation in increasingly desperate tones, but Norva had muted it around hour 36. "I can see the summit," Crix chittered, though whether this was a statement of fact or a hallucination was unclear. "That's a rock," Norva corrected weakly. "You're looking at a rock 3 meters in front of us. It's a very tall rock. Crix, buddy, I think your brain is running low on oxygen." "We all are." They continued climbing in silence because talking required air they didn't have. Around them, other cadets were making similarly glacial progress. A Zentari monk was crying and climbing simultaneously, which seemed inefficient, but oddly inspiring. 2 Krellian warriors were carrying each other, taking turns having breakdowns. Then Marcus appeared, descending from above. "Hey guys," he said, slightly winded but coherent. "Made it to the top. Figured I'd come back and see if anyone needed help." Crix stopped climbing. "You summited already?" "Yeah, about 20 minutes ago. Took a few pictures. The view's actually pretty great. Reminds me of Kilimanjaro." Kilimanjaro. Mountain in Tanzania. Tallest freestanding mountain on Earth. Went there on a gap year thing. The altitude was rough, but the sunrise at the summit was incredible. "You've climbed mountains for fun," Crix said flatly. "I mean, yeah, it's pretty common. People climb Everest and stuff. Though that's like really serious. You need permits and guides, and it's super expensive. Kilimanjaro was more accessible for a student budget." Norva's suit speaker made a sound like screaming, but quieter. "Everest. There's a mountain on your planet so tall and dangerous it has a name and people climb it recreationally." "Well, I mean, a lot of people die doing it. So it's not like super safe or anything. A lot of people die doing it, and that doesn't stop other people from trying. I mean, not really, no." Crix felt something break inside him. Not physically, but spiritually. "Marcus, what is your planet like? And I don't want the tourism board answer. I want the truth." Marcus sat down on a rock, apparently happy to take a break. "Okay, so Earth is like objectively pretty great, but also it's kinda trying to kill you all the time. We've got extreme weather on every continent. Predators that can and will eat you if you're not careful. Diseases, both natural and synthetic. Natural disasters that pop up with alarming regularity. Temperature swings that'll fry or freeze you depending on the season. The ocean has things in it that we're still discovering, and most of them are nightmare fuel. We've got deserts, tundras, rainforests, mountains, all with their own unique ways of being hostile to human life." "And you just live there?" Norva asked. "You just decided as a species that this was fine?" "We didn't really have a choice. It's our home. You adapt or you die, you know? So we adapted. We developed endurance hunting because we could track prey longer than they could run. We developed tool use because we didn't have claws or fangs. We developed complex social structures because survival was easier in groups. We basically min-maxed ourselves into being persistence predators with anxiety and opposable thumbs." "The Krathvor course is based on Krath Prime," Crix said quietly. "Krath Prime is classified as a Class 9 death world." "Oh yeah? What's Earth classified as?" "Class 12. Marcus blinked. "Wait, what's the scale go up to?" 12. "Oh." Marcus processed this for a moment. "So this course is like easier than my home planet?" "Significantly." "Huh." Marcus stood up and stretched. "That explains why I've been feeling kinda homesick. This is actually pretty mild by comparison." Somewhere in the command center, Velthar's soul left his body. "Okay," Marcus said, clapping his hands together. "Let's get you guys to the top. We've only got like 4 hours left, and I do not want anyone to miss the deadline after coming this far." "You're going to help us?" Crix asked. "Well, yeah. I mean, that's what you do, right? Help people. Plus, you guys shared your rations with me back in the miasma flats. Teamwork and all that." For the next 3 hours, Marcus Webb, xenobiology exchange student from Earth, Class 12 Death World, basically became a one-man extraction team. He helped pull cadets over difficult ledges. He shared his remaining water. He offered encouragement that ranged from genuinely inspiring to aggressively optimistic. At one point, he literally carried a Thoraxian cadet on his back for half a kilometer, while making conversation about Earth's pretty diverse ecosystem. When Crix finally crested the summit, collapsing on the extraction platform with the energy of someone who had just completed a religious pilgrimage, he looked up at Marcus with compound eyes that held newfound respect and lingering trauma. "You're insane," Crix chittered. "Your entire species is insane." "I mean, maybe a little," Marcus admitted, "but it's the fun kind of insane." Norva's containment suit, held together by prayers and emergency sealant, plopped down next to them. "If I survive this, I'm writing a thesis on human evolutionary psychology and why it explains everything wrong with the universe." "Cool," Marcus said. "Can I read it when you're done?" 18 cadets made it to the summit before the deadline. It was the lowest completion rate in the Academy's history. Marcus took a selfie with the group, everyone looking various degrees of dead inside, and sent it to his mom with the caption, "Survived the field trip." The completion ceremony for the Krathvor survival course was traditionally a solemn affair. Cadets who finished received their completion certificates in a formal presentation, while the Academy's senior staff looked on with stern approval. It was meant to be dignified, a recognition of suffering overcome and character forged in the fires of adversity. This year's ceremony was less dignified and more of a group trauma processing session. 18 cadets stood in formation, which was generous because stood implied structural integrity that most of them no longer possessed. Crix was being held upright by a medical support frame. Norva's containment suit was literally held together with replacement parts and prayer. The Zentari monk who had cried his way up the mountain was still crying, though now it seemed more like relief than despair. Marcus stood among them, looking slightly tired but otherwise fine, like someone who had just completed a moderately challenging workout. Velthar approached the podium with the energy of someone who had spent the last 48 hours having an existential crisis. His forearms held the completion certificates with less martial pride, and more the grip of someone clutching sanity by a thread. "Cadets," Velthar began, his voice carrying across the ceremony hall. "You have completed the Krathvor survival course. You have faced extreme conditions, hostile environments, and the limits of your own endurance. You have earned the respect of this Academy and the Coalition." He paused, his eyes drifting to Marcus, who waved politely. "You have also taught us something valuable about assumptions and proper threat assessment. Congratulations." The certificates were distributed. Each cadet received theirs with the solemn reverence of someone accepting a medal for surviving war. When Marcus received his, he looked at it with mild interest. "Oh, cool, it's printed on nice paper. Does this come with extra credit, or is it more of a participation thing?" Velthar's eye twitched. "It's a certification of completion for one of the most grueling military survival courses in the Coalition Cadet Web." Right. Super grueling. Got it." Marcus folded the certificate carefully. "So what's the next course? I've still got like 3 electives to fill this semester." Before Velthar could respond with something that would probably require an official apology later, Crix stepped forward. His exoskeleton was still cracked in 4 places, but he moved with purpose. "Commander, permission to speak?" "Granted, Cadet Crix." "Sir, I need to say something." Crix turned to face Marcus, his mandibles clicking in what might have been respect or the insectoid equivalent of a 1,000-yard stare. "Cadet Webb, when this course started, I thought I was prepared. I had plans, supplies, strategies. I had trained for cycles. And then I watched you treat the worst survival scenario in Coalition military training like a casual hiking trip." "I mean, it wasn't that casual," Marcus protested. "I was definitely breathing hard during the mountain climb." "You came back down the mountain to help us." "Well, yeah, but that's just basic trail etiquette. You don't leave people behind." Crix's voice rose slightly. "You scared off a Krathstalker by yelling at it. Most predators respond to threat displays. You jogged through the miasma flats. Cardio is important." You built a shelter in 15 minutes using what you called basic camping skills. Boy Scouts, man. Builds character. Crix turned back to Velthar, his voice taking on a slightly unhinged quality. Commander, I formally request that Earth's integration assessment be reviewed, and possibly that we add warning labels to any courses that include human exchange students. There was a murmur of agreement from the other cadets. The Zentari monk raised a tentacle in support. Norva's suit speaker crackled with what might have been applause or a dying battery. Velthar sighed, a sound that conveyed several decades of military experience confronting new and uncomfortable realities. Your request is noted, Cadet Crix. In fact, I submitted a formal threat reassessment for Earth approximately 37 hours ago. What classification did you recommend, sir? I recommended they be elevated from non-threatening to extreme caution with a side note that their cadets should probably be restricted from standard training courses and given something more appropriate to their physiology. Marcus raised his hand. Question. What kind of courses would those be? Velthar pulled up his datapad, scrolling through what he had researched during Marcus's casual destruction of the survival course. According to my research, Earth has something called ultramarathons where humans run distances exceeding 100 kilometers through deserts. You have competitions where people swim in freezing water. You have individuals who free climb vertical rock faces without safety equipment. You have a sport called rugby that appears to be sanctioned violence with a ball involved. Oh yeah, rugby's pretty intense, Marcus agreed. I played in high school, broke my collarbone sophomore year. You broke a major skeletal component and continued playing the sport? I mean, not immediately. I waited for it to heal, took like 8 weeks. Velthar closed his eyes, all of them, seeking patience from whatever cosmic force governed military instructors. Cadet Webb, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Sure, Commander. When you enrolled in the Krath-4 survival course, what did you think it was? Marcus looked genuinely thoughtful. Well, the course catalog listed it under environmental studies and the description said something about hands-on experience with extreme conditions and survival techniques. I'm studying xenobiology, so I figured it would be good to understand how different species adapt to hostile environments. Plus, it fulfilled my physical education requirement. You thought this was a field trip? I mean, yeah, an educational field trip, with practical applications. The course description also mentioned that it was the Academy's most challenging endurance trial and had a 40% failure rate. Right, but I figured that was like, marketing, making it sound more intense than it was. Like when a syllabus says a class is really hard, but it's actually pretty manageable if you do the readings. The ceremony hall was silent except for the sound of Norva's containment suit wheezing through damaged filters. Cadet Webb, Velthar said slowly. This course is specifically designed to push coalition military candidates to their absolute limits. It is based on conditions from one of the most hostile planets in known space. We use it to determine if cadets have the physical and mental fortitude to serve in extreme environment deployments. Oh, Marcus processed this. So this wasn't an elective? No. And the other cadets here, they're all actual military candidates? Yes. Huh. Marcus looked around at his fellow survivors, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to barely suppressed homicidal ideation. So when I asked if there was Wi-Fi in the death zone, that probably seemed weird, huh? Profoundly, Velthar confirmed. My bad. Probably should have read the full course description. Crix made a sound that might have been laughing or crying or both. He didn't even read the full course description. We trained for months, and he just showed up because it sounded interesting. In my defense, Marcus said, the course catalog is like 200 pages long and I had a bunch of classes to pick. I mostly just looked for things that sounded cool and fit my schedule. Velthar pulled up another file on his datapad, one he had been dreading showing anyone but felt was necessary given the circumstances. According to Earth's environmental data, your planet experiences regular temperature fluctuations that exceed anything we simulated in this course. Your atmosphere has higher oxygen content, so you've been operating at reduced lung capacity here. Your gravity is 36% higher than standard coalition gravity, meaning you've essentially been training with weights your entire life and didn't realize it. Wait, is that why everything feels kind of floaty here? I thought the station just had good anti-grav systems. That's normal gravity for most coalition species. Oh, that's actually really convenient. Makes carrying stuff way easier. Norva's suit speaker crackled. He thought the reduced gravity was a convenience feature. I'm going to decompose. I'm literally going to disperse into my component gases from the stress of this conversation. Velthar continued, driven by the need to fully understand what he had witnessed. Your planet also has multiple climate zones, extreme weather patterns, and predatory fauna across every major landmass and body of water. You evolved as persistence hunters, meaning your species literally evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Yeah, we're pretty good at the long-distance thing, Marcus agreed. Humans aren't super fast or strong compared to a lot of animals, but we can just keep going. Sweat cooling is pretty efficient, plus the whole bipedal thing helps with heat dissipation. The Krathvor course, Velthar said, his voice taking on the quality of someone explaining a joke that had gone horribly wrong, is designed to simulate conditions from a Class 9 death world. It is meant to be barely survivable. Your planet is classified as Class 12. What's Class 12 mean? It means your planet is rated at the maximum level of hostility to life. It means that by galactic standards, Earth is actively trying to kill everything on it through multiple simultaneous environmental threats. Marcus considered this. I mean, it's not that bad. We've got seasons which are nice, and most of the really dangerous stuff you can avoid if you're careful and pay attention. Plus, we've got medicine and climate control now, so it's way easier than it used to be. Way easier than it used to be, Crix repeated, his voice distant. It was worse. It used to be worse, and they survived anyway. Well, yeah. I mean, before modern medicine and stuff, life expectancy was pretty rough. But humans are adaptable. We figured it out. Velthar set down his datapad and looked at Marcus with all four eyes. Really looked at him, seeing not just a casual exchange student, but a representative of a species that had climbed its way to the top of a food chain on a planet that, by all reasonable standards, should have killed them off in their evolutionary infancy. Cadet Webb, I'm going to be very clear about something. You didn't excel at this course because you're exceptionally talented or because you trained harder than everyone else. Okay? You excelled because your normal daily existence on Earth is more challenging than the worst simulation we can create. You've been surviving a Class 12 death world your entire life and you think it's normal. I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds dramatic. It is dramatic. Your species looked at a planet covered in things that could kill you and decided to not just survive but thrive. You domesticated predators as pets. You climb mountains for recreation. You invented extreme sports because apparently just living wasn't challenging enough. Marcus shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both humility and the casual confidence of someone who had stared down a Krath stalker and won. I guess we just got used to it. You play the hand you're dealt, you know? Velthar turned to address the assembled cadets, his voice carrying the weight of new understanding. Let this be a lesson. Never assume you understand another species' capabilities based on surface observation. The human species survived and evolved on a planet that makes our worst training scenarios look mild. They are perhaps the most dangerous thing in this room, and they don't even realize it because to them this is just normal. So are humans scary? Asked one of the Zentari monks, tentacles quivering slightly. Terrifying, Velthar confirmed, but apparently very helpful and friendly about it. Marcus raised his hand again. So about that next semester, I still need to fill 2 more electives. Is there like an advanced version of this course or maybe something actually challenging? The ceremony hall erupted in various species-specific expressions of disbelief, trauma, and grudging respect. Crix turned to Norva. He wants something more challenging. I heard him. I'm choosing to believe I hallucinated it due to oxygen deprivation. This is real. This is our life now. We survived the Krathvor course with a human who thought it was easy. I need to call my family and apologize for every time I said they didn't understand my struggles. Velthar pulled up the course catalog on his datapad, scrolling through options with the resigned air of someone who knew he was about to make a terrible decision. There is one option, Cadet Webb. It's typically reserved for Special Forces training and has never been completed by an exchange student. Marcus leaned in, interested. What is it? 0G combat survival in a hostile boarding scenario. 4 weeks, no gravity, limited supplies, simulated enemy combatants. It has a 70% evacuation rate. Does it count for credit? Yes. Cool, sign me up. Somewhere in the command center, Pip pulled up Earth's file again and added a new note to the species assessment. Recommend warning labels on all training courses. Humans appear to have no concept of reasonable limits and will enthusiastically exceed them while offering to help others do the same. Classification: friendly but concerning. Threat level: extreme, but mostly to conventional training course completion statistics. The ceremony concluded with Velthar presenting the Group Completion Award, a distinction given when cadets work together to ensure maximum survival rates. As he handed the trophy to Crix, who accepted it with shaking mandibles, he leaned in close. Next time you see a human on the course roster, you have my permission to immediately form an alliance with them. Understood, sir. As the cadets dispersed, Marcus stopped by to thank Velthar for the course. Hey, that was actually pretty fun. Thanks for organizing it. Really helped me understand how different species handle environmental stress. It was my pleasure, Cadet Webb, Velthar said, which was only partially a lie. Tell me something, though. What's the most challenging thing you've done on Earth? For context. Marcus thought about it. Probably that time I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, 2,650 miles from Mexico to Canada. Took me 5 months. The mosquitoes in Oregon were pretty brutal. That sounds extreme. Nah, lots of people do it. There's a whole community of long-distance hikers. Some people do it every year. Marcus smiled. Earth's got some beautiful spots if you know where to look. You just gotta respect the environment and be prepared. Velthar watched Marcus walk away, waving goodbye to Crix and Norva, and made a mental note to include Earth in the Coalition's list of planets that should probably come with a warning label. Not because they were hostile, but because their inhabitants thought everything else was easy. And that, Velthar reflected as he filed his final report on the course, was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. The final incident report, filed 3 days later, included the following note. Recommend immediate review of all training courses for appropriate challenge levels relative to participant species homeworld classifications. Current human exchange student completed maximum difficulty survival course, while treating it as moderate difficulty educational field trip. Requesting budget increase for new extreme training scenarios that might actually challenge Class 12 Death World species. Also requesting trauma counseling for surviving cadets who now have existential questions about their own capabilities. In the mess hall, Crix and Norva sat across from Marcus sharing a meal. So you're really doing the Zero-G combat course next semester? Crix asked. Yeah, should be interesting. I've never done anything in Zero-G before. Most species find it extremely disorienting. Probably, but hey, new experiences, right? That's what exchange programs are for. Norva's suit speaker sighed. You know what the worst part is? What? Marcus asked. I'm actually starting to find your optimism inspiring instead of terrifying. Marcus grinned. See, that's character building right there. I hate that you're right. Builds character, though. Stop saying that. But Marcus just smiled, took a bite of his sandwich, and started planning his next adventure, completely unaware that he had fundamentally altered the Coalition's understanding of what qualified as a dangerous species. And really, wasn't that the most human thing of all?